Primary sources are fantastic resources for elementary, middle, high school, and college classrooms. They are full of historical information that can be analyzed and organized to help students understand the past, compare the past and the present, and identify points of view. Hi, I'm Keith Swaney. I'm an archivist at the New York State Archives in Albany, New York, and today I'm here at the library at the Adirondack Museum. Many historical documents can be found on the internet, but many, many more are available in local communities at public libraries, museums, and local governments. So it's well worth the effort to contact a local organization and do some real hands-on research to uncover documents that can be integrated into your classroom. Today we're here with Adirondack Museum librarian Jerry Pepper, who's going to explain to us how to conduct research in a historical organization. Thanks very much for letting us visit you today.
My pleasure.
Jerry, could you tell us what the Adirondack Museum is and its role within the community?
The Adirondack Park, which is an area the size of many states, has no university, has no big library, has nothing to really collect its cultural heritage. So the museum really functions as the key organization to preserve the cultural and documentary heritage of the Adirondacks.
Right. Can you tell us about the types of documents you maintain at the library and describe for us how the library acquires its historical resources?
Well, we've got about 11,000 volumes that deal with Adirondack history and related issues. We've got about 1,400 catalog maps. We've got county histories. We've got about 900 individually cataloged pieces of manuscript collections. We've got about 100 North Country newspaper titles on microfilm, and about another 100 audio tapes of oral histories.
How about the process that somebody would use when they want to begin research? At the State Archives where I work, when somebody wants to begin research, we usually direct them to our website, which has the online catalog and the finding aids and index tools. Does the library at the Adirondack Museum have similar resources?
We have an online catalog that's available on the museum's website. We have a certain amount of material that has been digitized and is available. But mostly if people want to access the material, they have to come here.
When researchers want to use the records, is it best for them to call in advance to make an appointment, or they just show up here to start?
Well, they can show up, but if I'm here by myself, and if there's nobody here to help them, they're going to be out of luck. So we do strongly recommend that people make an appointment prior to coming up.
How about when researchers arrive at the library? Are there specific rules they need to follow in order to use the documents? If they'd like to have copies of a document, can they bring in a digital camera, or is it best for you and your staff to make copies for them?
It depends on the material. Anything that's fragile, we will make copies for researchers. But we try to let people use things like digital cameras, if they bring them in.
Any other things that researchers should know about if they intend to publish the records?
Well, the published material is covered by the copyright of the publication. A fair amount of it's in the public domain and is usable.
Great, thanks, Jerry. Now that we're more familiar with the library and the services you provide, would you mind sharing some examples of some documents with us today?
Sure.
Great. So, Jerry, could you tell us a little bit about what we see here? It looks like we have a couple historical maps.
This is a map of the region that was done around the time of the French and Indian War in 1763. It was done for the Universal Magazine, which was a magazine that was published in London. And there was a tremendous amount of interest in the region worldwide. This was a world war that started right in western Pennsylvania. And this was the front lines in northern New York. And the map is interesting because it shows the Adirondacks as parts but little known. This was an unknown part of the civilized world in 1763.
And then we have another map here that, speaking of boundaries, shows a number of different purchases, it looks like. Can you explain that one to us?
Sure. This is a 1893 map that was done by the New York State Forest Commission. And it shows the great land purchases in northern New York. Northern New York was occupied by the Mohawk Nation until around the time of the American Revolution, and therefore was largely unsettled in the early 19th century. And after the New York became a state, the state tried to get rid of the land as quickly as possible. The state needed money, needed money to pay Revolutionary War soldiers and such. and therefore sold the land off in big chunks. Macomb's purchase was for several million acres. Macomb was a fur trader from Detroit, and I think he paid something like 4 cents an acre for all that Adirondack land.
Wow. Moving on, it looks like we have here a couple tickets from the Lake Placid Olympic Winter Games, the third games that were held in Lake Placid, New York, 1932.
The 32 games were, I believe they were the first Winter Games in the United States, and it really was a way of introducing winter sports, things like skating and skiing and bobsledding and stuff like that into the country to a really broader audience.
Very good. And it looks like here, Jerry, we have a couple documents here that talk about transportation. One here is a broadside warning children and other people that there's going to be this automobile tour coming through. And here we have a couple different tickets, railroad tickets, it looks like, of different passengers.
The railroads came into the Adirondacks, really crossed the Adirondacks in the 1890s. Mm-hmm. And the railroads really opened the place up to a lot of middle-class tourists. So it really changed the scope of tourism. And, of course, automobiles changed everything. Now, this was from the Glidden Tour in 1906, which passed through the Adirondacks. And it gives you some sense of how they were driving, because it warns that children should be kept off the road and dogs, chickens, and livestock should be confined during the day.
And then the final document we have here is an image of the logging industry.
This is a report from the State Forest, Fish, and Game Commission done around the turn of the century. And what this has is a series of log marks. Now, one of the problems that loggers had was getting the wood out to the mills, to market. Mm-hmm. There were no roads. There were no railroads until the 1890s. So basically, loggers floated logs down the rivers and lakes and ponds out to places like Glens Falls or out to Potsdam, which were milling centers. When it got to Glens Falls, of course, all the logs were all jumbled up together. And what they would do is on the butt end of each log, they would whack it, and it would put this log mark on there. And then they would get to Glens Falls, and they would separate them out. And this way they would know whose log belonged to which company.
Jerry, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today and for sharing all these wonderful resources with us.
It's been
a
fun.
pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.